You've been living under a ceiling of lies so intricately woven, you've mistaken it for the sky. Tonight, we will peel back reality, one unbearable truth at a time, till the sky itself collapses, and you're left with nothing but the silence that has always been underneath. 1. The mirror isn't real, but you still look every morning. You stare into the mirror. You think it reflects your fixed identity, a being with continuity, a self. But that assumption is the first fracture. The face you see is just a composition of memory and biology, projected through a lens that lies for survival. You aren't looking at yourself. You're looking at what your brain allows you to see to maintain the illusion that you are a single, unified person. But neuroscience has already dismantled that fantasy. Split brain experiments by Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga proved it. When the corpus callosum is severed, the left and right hemispheres of the brain can function independently, unaware of what the other half knows. In one such study, a patient's right brain, which sees the left field of vision, was shown the word toothbrush, but the patient could not say what they saw because language resides in the left brain. Yet when asked to point with their left hand, they correctly chose a toothbrush from a pile. One brain saw, the other did not. Which one was you? This isn't a glitch. This is how you function all the time. You are not a single consciousness, but a parliament of competing processes. Your sense of self is just the loudest voice at any given moment, shouting above the noise so you can pretend someone's in control. There is no pilot. Just collision avoidance systems trying not to crash. Derek Parfit's psychological continuity theory dismantles identity even further. Suppose your memories and personality were uploaded to a digital clone or transferred, neuron by neuron, to a replica. Is that you? If you believe so, then which one is the original? And if it's not you, then what part is irreplaceable? Where exactly do you live inside your body? Your cells die and replace every 7 to 10 years. What survived the turnover? Now, consider this. Your brain reconstructs the world every second, not records it. What you see, hear, feel, these are hallucinations your mind has learned to agree upon with the outside world. The now you think you experience is actually 80 milliseconds delayed, your brain's best guess of what already happened. You're not in the moment. You're after it. Always lagging, always a step behind your own life. Even your decisions, what you think of as your will, are illusions. In 1983, Benjamin Libet's experiments showed that the brain initiates action hundreds of milliseconds before we become consciously aware of deciding to act. You decide nothing. Your brain fires, your hand moves, and only afterwards do you tell yourself a story about why you moved. You are a spectator, not a controller. But it gets worse. Your memories, fabrications, each time you recall one, it is rewritten, not retrieved. Elizabeth Loftus proved that simple suggestion can implant false memories into the minds of innocent people, convincing them they saw things that never happened. If your memories are manipulatable, then what part of your past is yours? How much of it is an invention created to protect your fragile, synthetic sense of identity? You wake up each day assuming continuity, that the you who went to sleep is the same you who woke up. But there is no evidence this is true. There is no persistent observer. There is only the current process, streaming inputs, running models, predicting outcomes. You are software pretending to be the machine. Even your emotions betray you. What you call love, anger, or shame are evolutionary adaptations, mechanisms for social survival, not transcendent truths. Your grief is a chemical, your joy a squirt of dopamine. Every sacred feeling you've ever had can be replicated, interrupted, or destroyed with the right combination of electrical pulses or pharmaceuticals. Your soul is a drug cocktail. You are not who you think you are. You never were. There is no core. There is no self. Just a story that insists it is real, because the alternative is unbearable. But if the mirror lies, and the brain deceives, and the self is a fiction, then who exactly is asking these questions? 2. Time isn't real, but your death still is. You live inside a clock you didn't build, ruled by hours you didn't invent, and yet every heartbeat of your existence ticks in submission to the illusion of time. But what if I told you that time, the very backbone of your life, is not a constant, not a truth, not even a thing? It is a construct, a malfunctioning language humans created to endure the slow erosion of consciousness. In physics, time is not absolute. Einstein shattered that fantasy with his theory of relativity. According to him, time dilates and bends depending on speed and gravity. Two people can age at different rates. Time slows near a black hole. GPS satellites must constantly correct their clocks to match Earth-based time because they're moving too fast and floating too high. So which time is real? Earth's or space's? The answer is neither. There is no master clock. But it gets worse. In quantum mechanics, the study of the very small time doesn't even appear in the fundamental equations. The Schrödinger equation describes how particles behave, and it evolves without time. Events do not unfold sequentially in the quantum realm. They just are existing in superposition, multiple states at once. Before you observe a particle, it's not in one position, it's in all positions. Time doesn't collapse, your perception does. In 2019, theoretical physicist Carlo Rovelli proposed a model in which time is not a fundamental property of the universe at all. In his view, time emerges only from relationships between things, from interactions and correlations. If nothing changes, time disappears. Think about that. Time is not ticking in the void. It's invented by the pattern of change you observe. No change, no time, no witness, no clock. So what does this mean for your life? You live by a linear story. Birth, childhood, youth, adulthood, death. But physics doesn't confirm that narrative. The arrow of time, the reason you remember the past, but not the future, is based solely on entropy, the tendency for systems to move from order to disorder. This isn't a force of nature. It's an accounting rule. Your memories are footprints in the sand, not time travel passes. And even that sand is being rearranged by winds you don't feel. Julian Barber, another physicist, goes further. In his timeless theory of the universe, the cosmos is composed of nows static, complete configurations of the universe. You don't move through time. You jump from frame to frame, like still images stitched together by a mind desperate to feel motion. What you call time is just a psychological glue. There is no river of time carrying you forward. There is no past to go back to. No future waiting ahead. Just frames. Just illusions. Just now. But even within this shattering realization, you try to anchor yourself with death. You say, fine, time may be an illusion, but I still die. That's real, is it? What if death is just the moment your current configuration loses continuity with the next? If time isn't real, then death isn't a destination. It's not even an event. It's simply the frame that doesn't lead anywhere. Your consciousness, never. Real to begin with doesn't go anywhere. It just stops appearing in the sequence. Think of this. You've already experienced unconsciousness every night. Sleep without dreams. Hours vanish. Where were you? What makes you believe death is different? What convinces you that the self survives beyond its structure? And yet, you still fear death as if fearing the dark will make the stars reappear. But let's go deeper. What if your fear of death isn't fear of non-existence? What if it's fear of having never existed at all? Because if time isn't real, then there was no beginning for you. Just a sudden appearance in a frame that told a story you didn't write. If there's no before and no after, then your life is not a journey, it's a snapshot. Your birth, your laughter, your heartbreak, your regrets, they aren't a film. Real, they're a photograph trapped in a gallery with no doors. And when your heart stops, nothing changes, because nothing was ever moving. The clock you followed was fake. The future you imagined was a myth. The time you wasted trying to find meaning was chasing a ghost through a house that never existed. But if time doesn't move, and death doesn't arrive, and your life never progressed at all, then what exactly have you been waiting for? 3. Memory is a lie that keeps you trapped in a story. You define yourself by what you remember. You cling to memories as if they're proof that you existed, that you felt, that you mattered. You believe memory is a vault storing your childhood, your traumas, your victories. But what if memory isn't a recording? What if it's a weapon forged by your mind to rewrite reality every time you reach for it? Here's what neuroscience tells us. Every time you recall a memory, you are not retrieving the original, you are recreating it. The hippocampus reactivates the neural pattern, yes, but then the memory is restored, slightly altered, slightly bent, like a file that becomes corrupted every time you open and save it. You're not remembering, you're editing. And worse, you don't notice, because the act of remembering feels so real. Elizabeth Loftus' research exposed this fragility. She implanted false memories into people, memories of being lost in a mall as a child, of nearly drowning, of witnessing events that never happened. And people didn't just accept them, they embellished them. They felt emotions about them. They cried over them. They built their identities around them. So tell me again, what's the difference between a real trauma and a false one, if both shape you equally? Your childhood, the one you mourn, the one you miss, may never have existed. That perfect moment with your mother in the kitchen, that heartbreak in the rain, that feeling of being seen for the first time. If you remember it, it's real to you. But maybe it never happened at all. And yet, your entire identity is constructed on this foundation. I am the way I am because of what happened to me. But if what happened is itself a fiction, then who are you beneath the memory? Nothing. You are not a story. You are the narrator, pretending there's a story. Even the continuity of self across time depends on the illusion of stable memory. But studies of patients with severe amnesia like Clive Waring prove that without memory, identity disintegrates. Clive could play piano, but couldn't remember his own children. He said, "I am awake for the first time every few minutes." Each moment was now disconnected from every other. If memory is removed, your personality, your relationships, your very sense of being collapses. So what does that make you? A ghost held together by echoes. A glitch looping its own hallucinations. And here's the sick twist your brain lies. On purpose. Your memory reshapes itself to avoid trauma, to protect ego, to preserve. Your brain does not want you to see the truth. It wants coherence, not accuracy. So, the breakup that destroyed you, your brain rewrote their intentions. The success you remember with pride, your memory inflated your role. The person you think you loved, a reconstruction of chemicals and longing, sharpened by years of loneliness. It's not just that memory lies, it lies strategically to protect the illusion of you. And yet you trust it. You define truth by it. You believe. People who remember the same things must be allies, must be family. But collective memory is even more dangerous. Look at history. Entire nations build identities on myths. Propaganda becomes gospel. Events that never happened become holy. Victories are invented. Genocides are erased. And suddenly millions believe. A past that never existed. Why? Because people crave stories more than truth. And memory is the author no one questions. In the courtroom, in relationships, in religion, in politics, we treat memory as evidence. But it's not. It's performance. It's improvisation. It's a theater so convincing, even the actor forgets the lines were written overnight. And here's the final twist. You are remembering this moment right now, but even as it's happening, your brain is shaping it to fit your narrative. You're not hearing this neutrally. You're filtering it through bias, trauma, fear, identity. You are editing reality as it unfolds. So if memory is fabricated, and identity is memory, and reality is filtered through both, then what's left that hasn't already been rewritten? For language is a prison you mistake for thought. You believe you think in words, that thoughts are just internal speech sentences echoing through your mind. But what if I told you language isn't a tool for understanding reality, it's a cage that shapes and limits it? You don't use language. Language uses you. From the moment you're born, words begin defining your world, naming, labeling, cutting reality into chunks your brain can organize. Tree, love, self, death. But the moment something is named, it stops being what it is and becomes what the word allows it to be. The infinite complexity of a tree is reduced to 4 letters. The haunting vastness of death is confined to a syllable. And yet, without language, you cannot even conceive of the world. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis says the structure of your language shapes how you perceive reality. This isn't metaphorical, it's literal. Cultures that lack future tense verbs actually think differently about time. The Pirahu people of the Amazon have no words for numbers. Not even one. They cannot count. Not because they are unintelligent, but because their language has no concept for quantity. So what are you missing because your language has no word for it? Do you feel unnamed emotions? Longings with no language? Have you ever experienced something so raw, so vast, that words failed you and you felt it dissolve the moment you tried to describe it? Language shrinks the world to fit inside your mouth, and this shrinking becomes permanent. Because once you learn a word, your brain stops seeing the thing as it is and starts seeing only the word. The child who once saw magic in the sky learns to call it cloud. The lover who once trembled with connection begins saying relationship. The moment something is defined, it is dead. But it gets worse. Language is not just a filter, it's a weapon. Every ideology, every identity, every war begins with language. Enemy, God, patriot, infidel. Words load reality with emotion, with judgment. You are manipulated not by truth, but by phrasing. A freedom fighter is a terrorist with different branding. A fetish is a ritual with less prestige. Justice is revenge rewritten by winners. You think you're rational, that your beliefs are rooted in logic, but logic itself is language-bound. You use grammar like a scaffolding for reality, never questioning the foundations. But grammar is arbitrary. In Hopi, there are no tenses. In Inuit languages, there are dozens of words for snow, but none for weather. Their world is carved differently. Their reality is carved differently. And your very identities, a product of linguistic repetition. You say, I am sad, but language fuses the state with the self. You are not feeling sadness, you are sadness. Language has made your emotions into prisons. You say, I am lost, but you're not currently uncertain. You have become lostness. The sentence isn't just describing your world, it's defining it. You trap yourself with syntax. Even your inner monologue, the voice in your head, is not you. It's a mimic, an internalized collection of voices. Parents, teachers, media, trauma. It speaks in language you didn't invent, in phrases you didn't choose. And you listen, as if it's your true self. But what existed before you had language? Can you even remember? Children, before they speak, don't narrate their experience. They are their experience. Before you had words, you felt without explanation. You saw without naming. But now every thought you have is filtered, edited, diminished by language. Wittgenstein said, the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. So what are you blind to, simply because your language has no name for it? What horrors do you accept because language has softened them? Collateral damage, enhanced interrogation, cultural differences. Language sterilizes evil. And what truths have you buried beneath words that sound good but mean nothing? Everything happens for a reason. It is what? It is, be yourself. Phrases that numb the mind, freeze inquiry, dull the blade of thought. These are not ideas. They are sedatives. You were taught that language is power. But what if it's anesthesia? Because if words shape your reality, and every thought is made of words, and words are inherently flawed, limited, and deceptive, then have you ever actually had a single original thought? 5. Consciousness is an accident, pretending to be divine. You've been told your consciousness is special, sacred, the crown, jewel of evolution. That the fact you can reflect on your own existence proves there's something more, something divine, or at least meaningful about being human. But what if consciousness isn't a gift? What if it's a byproduct, a glitch in the machinery, masquerading as purpose? The illusion begins here. You think you are conscious, that consciousness is a light switched on behind your eyes, that you, as a self, observe the world from a throne inside your skull, but that throne is empty. There is no seat of consciousness in the brain. Neuroscientists have searched through fMRIs, lesion studies, cortical mapping and found no center, no singular you, just distributed processes running in parallel, competing for attention. Your thoughts are not unified. They are a hallucination of unity. Think of the global workspace theory. It suggests consciousness is simply the byproduct of information being broadcast to multiple systems in your brain at once. Not a soul, not a spirit, just a trick of networking. Your awareness is lagging behind the processes it thinks it controls. You only become conscious of an intention after it has already begun. Benjamin Libet's experiments. Again your brain fires before you decide. You're a witness to choices made elsewhere. So what, then, is the point of consciousness? Evolution didn't need it. Bacteria survive, plants grow, octopuses solve puzzles with distributed intelligence in their limbs. Most of life operates perfectly without "I think, therefore I am." So why are you cursed with it? Because consciousness isn't about survival, it's about narrative coherence. It's the voice that stitches together fragments of perception into a story that seems continuous. It doesn't do anything. It explains things after they happen. You are not conscious to control life. You are conscious so you can justify it. But it gets worse. Because if consciousness is an accident, then so is suffering. Your dog feels pain. So does a fly. But suffering, the recursive awareness of pain, the why me, the memory of trauma, the anticipation of hurt, that is a uniquely human torment. Your consciousness allows you to loop, to relive every wound, to imagine thousands more, to compare your pain to others, to doubt the meaning of it all. No other animal suffers like this. You alone are self-aware enough to hate your own existence. And even this suffering, you believe it makes you real, deep, human. But it's just recursive error, a loop that never ends. Your mind can't escape itself. You are a machine caught in its own echo. There is no evidence that your consciousness continues after death. Every piece of data we have suggests the mind dies with the brain. NDE's near-death experiences are chemically induced. The feeling of floating, of tunnels, of seeing loved ones, reproducible with ketamine. The sense of time slowing, a function of dying neurons. You are not glimpsing the divine. You are hallucinating collapse. And yet, people cling to consciousness as proof of soul. But if your awareness can be manipulated by drugs, brain injuries, sleep deprivation, trauma, what part of it is sacred? Split-brain patients can operate as two different people within the same skull. Stroke victims can lose half their body image, swearing their left arm belongs to someone else. People with Capgras syndrome believe their loved ones have been replaced with imposters. In each case, the feeling of self remains, but it shifts, fractures, reforms. So what is you made of, if not continuity? You are software running on failing hardware. You mistake the flicker of a candle for the existence of light itself. And even worse, this flicker convinces you it matters, that being aware gives you value. But consciousness didn't ask to exist. It doesn't even understand itself. The more science studies it, the more it disappears into paradox. Panpsych suggests everything is conscious. Integrated information theory says consciousness is just complexity arranged a certain way. Others argue it's an illusion, a trick played on the mind by itself. So if your self-awareness is accidental, and your suffering is recursive, and your thoughts are post hoc explanations, then what makes you believe that being conscious is anything more than a beautifully constructed curse? 6. Free will is a stage play you were cast in without a script you think you choose. That at every fork in the road, every relationship, every regret, you are the one making the decision. You believe your life is a sequence of freely chosen actions, that you are the author of your own story. But you're not the author, you're the character reading lines written by biology, environment, and chance. Let's begin with the basics, your genetics. You didn't choose your DNA, but it defines your predispositions, your temperament, your sensitivity to risk, your capacity for empathy. You didn't choose your parents, your early childhood, the shape of your brain. Yet all of these things laid the foundation for what you call yourself. The truth is, choice is an illusion that emerges after decisions are made. In 2008, Neuroscientist John Dylan Haynes conducted experiments that showed your brain can predict your decision up to 7 seconds before you become consciously aware of it. Imagine that. You're sitting, believing you're choosing left or right, but your brain already knew. You were just catching up. You were not the commander, you were the press secretary, inventing explanations after the command has already gone out. And this is not an isolated finding. It's been replicated again and again. Still think you have free will? Let's go deeper. Imagine two people, one raised in violence, one in nurture. One born with a genetic risk for impulse control, another with natural emotional regulation. Place them in the same moment. A heated argument, a flash of rage, a fist clenched. One swings, one breathes. Who chose? When we look at their neurochemistry, their past trauma, their brain scans, we begin to see the architecture of behavior, not the agency. But instead of accepting this, we insist they were free. We need to believe that, because without free will, blame collapses, responsibility evaporates. Justice becomes vengeance dressed in morality. But if no one is truly free, then punishment is cruelty, and reward just luck. Yet society survives on the myth of free will. It gives us control. It makes us feel safe. We punish the criminal not because they could have done otherwise, but because we need to believe they could have. Otherwise, what are we punishing? Even in your personal life, the illusion is comforting. You regret, you replay decisions. You tell yourself, I should have done this differently. But what if you couldn't have? What if every neuron, every hormone, every word you ever spoke was inevitable? Sam Harris called free will an illusion so complete that it feels like truth. And it has to, because if you didn't choose your job, your relationships, your personality, your addictions, then what is you? A chemical event, a narrative product of invisible causes. You might say, but I feel like I'm making choices. And yes, you do, but feeling isn't proof. You also feel like the sun moves across the sky. That doesn't make it true. Even your so-called moments of change, the books that changed your mind, the conversations that opened your eyes, those too were accidents. You didn't choose to encounter them. They just appeared in the river you're floating in, and you grabbed them because that's what your mind was conditioned to do, still clinging to control. Let's end with this. If you truly had free will, you would be able to control your thoughts. Try this. For the next 60 seconds, don't think about a white bear. Not once. Try. You failed. You didn't choose to fail. It just happened. Because thoughts are not under your control. They arise. They pass, like clouds. And yet, you still believe that you are the one driving the weather. So if your choices are platoon, and your mind is a puppet of causes you can't see, and your entire life is just a performance of probability, then why do you still believe the curtain will ever lift to reveal someone holding the pen? 7. History is a fiction agreed upon by the victors. You were taught to revere history. To believe it is the story of humanity unfolding, the documentation of truth through time. You recite dates, remember names, memorize victories and losses as if they were facts carved in stone. But history is not truth. It is storytelling, weaponized. It is propaganda preserved, a memory shaped not by what happened, but by who was left standing to say what happened. History is written by the victors. You've heard that line. But have you ever truly felt its implications? For every story you've read in a textbook, there exists another that was erased, burned, buried. Every empire that told its glory wrote over the bones of those it slaughtered. Every nation that celebrates its founding silences the screams of those it displaced. You've been taught that history is linear, that it progresses, that it moves forward. But progress for whom? Let's look at some truths you were likely not taught. The Library of Alexandria housed knowledge from every known civilization, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, history. It was burned, not once, but repeatedly. The details of its destruction are debated. That's the point. The event itself is lost in contradiction, and with it, possibly thousands of years of human understanding gone. And then there are the deliberate erasures. Entire civilizations, like the Carthaginians, were systematically wiped from existence. The Romans not only destroyed Carthage, they salted the earth so nothing could grow. Then they rewrote the story. Carthage was evil. Carthage was barbaric. Carthage deserved it. You never questioned that narrative, because you were never given the other side. Every genocide begins with a narrative. Every empire begins with a lie. The United States founding, glorified as revolution, but it was birthed in blood, slavery, and stolen land. The great men of history, Jefferson, Washington, Churchill, had hands soaked in brutality. But your textbooks taught you too. Praise them. Statues were built, national myths crafted, and the horrors rewritten, diminished, sanitized. Even timelines are fabricated. The concept of BC and AD centers one religion, one civilization, as the axis of time itself. Imagine the arrogance. Now consider what that does to the minds of billions to be told that all of history pivots on a moment not universally shared. History is not objective, it is curated. What gets remembered is political. What gets forgotten is strategic. Look at your own country's past. Look at the heroes you were taught to admire. How many were oppressors to someone else? How many victories were massacres with better PR? The Rwandan genocide was not ancient history. It happened in 1994. 1 million people hacked to death with machetes while the world watched. But how often is it mentioned in Western classrooms? Compare that to the saturation of European wars in historical curricula. The silence is telling. History favors those who own the pen. Even in your own memory, your personal history. Rewrite the past to make yourself the hero or the victim. You don't remember accurately. You remember narratively. We all do. Now zoom out. What if all of recorded history is doing the same? What if the entire timeline you believe in, the rise and fall of empires, the enlightenment of man, the invention of democracies, a version designed to justify the present? What if every age is a mirror reflecting only what the current power structure wants you to see? What if what you call ancient history is closer than you think, and what you call modern is already rotting? And what about the civilizations we don't remember? Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 years old, predates the earliest known cities. Who built it? How? Why? We don't know. The narrative doesn't fit our linear model of primitive to complex evolution, so we minimize it, ignore it. How much has been hidden because it doesn't serve the story? How much of who you think you are is based on events that may have never happened or happened very differently? So if history is curated, and the victors write it, and the losers are forgotten, then whose blood is beneath the ink of every word you've ever called truth? 9. The illusion of self-control. You are not the one steering the ship. You're just narrating its movements after the fact. The human mind clings to the belief that we are the architects of our actions, the captains of our thoughts, the sovereign rulers of our behavior. But science and the subconscious tell the far darker story. Experiments in neuroscience have revealed that our brain often initiates actions before we become consciously aware of them. Benjamin Libet's famous study showed a shocking delay between brain activity and conscious intention. Your brain decides before you believe you've decided. You feel like you chose to raise your hand, but the signal was already firing, milliseconds ahead of your awareness. You're not driving, you're just being informed of the direction the wheel is turning. This is not an error, it's by design. Your conscious mind is a narrator, not a controller. A storyteller that takes whatever your subconscious decides and weaves it into a neat little lie. I chose that. You didn't choose the thought that popped into your head. You didn't choose your reaction to that insult. You didn't even choose your cravings, fears, or motivations. They emerged, uninvited, and you just claimed them after the fact. So what does that mean for responsibility, for morality, for free will? If the engine is running without you, are you still guilty for where the car ends up? Maybe the truth is unbearable. That free will is a comforting illusion we hold on to because the alternative, chaotic storm of pre-programmed reactions, is too horrifying to face. And when that illusion fades, you're left with the silence between thoughts, the place where you never really existed. 10. The voice in your head isn't you. If you can hear it, then who's listening? All your life, you've lived with a voice inside your head. It narrates your day, judges your decisions, replays old arguments, imagines future ones, and constantly reminds you of who you think you are. You call it thinking, but what if that voice isn't actually you? Let's test something. Sit still, don't speak, just listen. That voice will say something like, "This is weird, I'm doing it wrong, nothing's happening." And in that instant, who noticed the voice? You did. But if you heard it, then you can't be it. This voice never shuts up. It talks when you're trying to sleep. It criticizes when you try to grow. It judges others, then turns and judges you. It's a running monologue, like a poorly written TV show you didn't ask to be cast in. And yet, it narrates your entire life. But here's the horror. That voice isn't wise. It's not your friend. It's not even original. It's a patchwork of parental commands, cultural norms, past traumas, and half-remembered fears. It's just noise, and yet you mistake it for yourself. Most people never question it. They live their whole lives following this internal narrator like it's the voice of God. But when you realize it's just chatter and conscious noise, a terrifying silence follows. Because if that voice is not you, then who are you? A watcher, an awareness behind the thoughts. Or worse, just another voice pretending it's in control. And in the stillness, where no voice speaks, do you still exist? 10. The final collapse. What happens when you've seen too much? You are no longer who you were. Not quite awake, not quite asleep. Your mind floats between the atoms of certainty and the void of realization. Over the past hours, you've consumed a truth diet far more potent than the lies that once sustained you. You're mentally malnourished, now but also reborn. What you've just experienced was not just a story, it was a dismantling. Each of the 101 truths whispered into your ears was a brick pulled from the fortress you once called reality. Now you stand exposed, raw and vulnerable, but finally aware. You've seen how the mind isn't your own, how reality is fragile, how beliefs are implanted, how emotions are manufactured, how freedom is engineered. And yet, after all this, still here, still breathing, still listening. Why? Because buried under all those disturbing truths, there is one undisturbable truth. You are the observer, not the thought, not the lie, not even the truth. Just awareness, watching it all unravel. That awareness, that silent witness behind your thoughts, is untouched. It has never been disturbed. It has only been watching. And now, as this video fades, it still watches. Calm, timeless, eternal. Sleep now, not in ignorance, but in power, in knowing, in depth. Tonight, you didn't just fall asleep. You woke up. Subscribe for more truths your mind has been trained to avoid. 11. The illusion of a unified self. You are not who you think you are. In fact, you are not even one person. The human mind clings to the idea of a unified identity, an I that remains constant through time. But this comforting illusion is biologically false. The truth is, your personality is a loosely held committee of conflicting subselves, all fighting for control at any given moment. You are not a captain steering the ship. You are the entire chaotic crew, unaware that the wheel is turning itself. One moment, you're rational. The next, you're impulsive. In love, then ashamed. Focused, then empty. Each of these mental states is a distinct neurological pattern, and no single version of you is in charge for very long. What we call personality is just the statistical average of who wins most often. So which one is the real you? None. All. It depends on when you're asked, who's watching, what chemicals are flowing through your bloodstream, and what memories are active in your mind. The you who makes decisions when calm would often be horrified by the you who acts during rage or fear. Even memories are edited by whichever subself is in control. Your past, your future, your desires, your morals, they all change depending on the dominant state. In fact, some therapists treat internal trauma by directly addressing the different parts of a person, like negotiating with multiple minds trapped in one body. In extreme cases, this disunity shows up as dissociative identity disorder. But for most of us, it quietly hides behind our illusion of normalcy. You're not mentally broken, you're just not built to be one singular self. Evolution designed us to be adaptable, fragmented, and unstable, because a flexible mind survives longer than a rigid one. You are not a noun. You are a verb, a process, a storm. And every time you fall asleep, the person who wakes up is slightly different. 12. The question you've avoided since childhood. You've run from it in games, distracted yourself in school, ignored it during late-night conversations, and numbed it with the noise of adulthood. But the question remains. It waits at the edge of your consciousness like a shadow just outside your field of view. Why are you, not who are you? That's a social costume, not what are you. That's biology. But why you? Why? This particular consciousness, in this particular body, with this set of experiences, placed on this tiny blue planet in the middle of cosmic silence. No one prepared you for this. As a child, you assumed it was random. You were told you were born, and that was that. But deep inside, you felt the tension, a strange awareness that among billions of configurations, you happened. You exist. You're watching this video. And that fact alone should be more disturbing than any horror movie you've ever seen. You are a locked room with no key sign. Explains how your body works. Religion gives you a narrative for your existence. But neither can explain the raw absurdity of awareness. Try to step outside your own point of view. Try to unfeel yourself. You can't. You are trapped inside one first-person lens, a single, irreversible stream of perception you never chose. You didn't pick your parents. You didn't pick your DNA. You didn't pick your birth date or your socioeconomic circumstances. Yet every decision, every relationship, every fear and dream and goal is filtered through this prison of perception. So what are you, exactly? The illusion of continuity. Most people assume they are the same person from childhood to now. But that's a lie your brain tells to maintain sanity. Your cells have been replaced. Your memories are rewritten each time you access them. Your values shift. Your thoughts contradict. Your goals mutate. So if you are not your memories, and you are not your body, and you are not your name, job, or relationships, then what are you holding on to? What's behind the curtain? A voice, an echo, or worse, nothing at all. Every mirror is lying. You've looked in mirrors your whole life, but not once have you actually seen your real self. Mirrors flip you. Photos distort you. Others project on you. Your self-image is a corrupted composite, built from shame, approval, trauma, and expectation. Your voice sounds different in recordings because you never truly hear yourself. Your image looks different in photos because you never truly see yourself. Your soul feels foreign in silence because you never truly meet yourself. You've been outsourcing your identity to anything that reacts. Identity is a story you tell yourself to avoid the truth. At some point in early childhood, you began to build a narrative. I am smart. I am shy. I am good at this. I am not good enough. Each I am became a building block. But here's the truth. You built your identity on reflections, not reality. What your parents praised you for, what teachers labeled you as, what peers rewarded or rejected. So who are you beneath the story? Are you a script or the space that reads it? The mirror stage never ends in psychology. There's a concept called the mirror stage, when a baby first recognizes itself in a reflection and begins forming an ego. But what if the mirror stage never truly ends? What if you've spent your whole life trying to reconfirm you exist by seeing yourself reflected in jobs, achievements, love, status, and screens? Every time you check your phone, a mirror. Every time you post online, a mirror. Every time someone likes you, a mirror. And every time you're alone, a terror. Why? Because without the mirror, the illusion disappears, and you are left with the unbearable awareness of nothing. The question you've avoided is the gateway to freedom. Ask it. Ask it now. Why am I me? Don't look for a neat answer. There isn't one. Don't reach for philosophy. It won't help. Don't ask religion to save you from the question. Not yet. Just sit in the unknown. Let the silence answer. Because that silence is you. Not the voice you use to narrate thoughts. Not the image you hold in your mind. Not the name, the face, the Instagram bio. Just the ungraspable observer behind all of it. And if you can sit there long enough without going insane, you may discover something nobody else can give you. Freedom from the illusion of identity. And the moment you touch it, you'll understand why almost no one dares to go there. 13. The time you think you have doesn't exist. Time isn't passing, you are. You measure life in years. You count birthdays, anniversaries, deadlines, and regrets. You imagine time as a river flowing endlessly forward, past, present, future. But physics, once again, betrays this illusion. Einstein shattered the linear dream with one brutal insight. Time is not universal. It bends, it stretches, it freezes. In the theory of relativity, time dilates, moves slower for the one in motion. Clocks tick differently depending on your speed and proximity to gravity. Astronauts age slower than you. GPS satellites must adjust for time dilation just to function. This is not theoretical. It's happening right now. So what is time if it doesn't move equally for everyone? Why does it feel so real if physics treats it like putty? Even worse, the concept of the present dissolves under scrutiny. What is now, a second, a millisecond, neuroscience, suggests your perception of the present is a stitched-together hallucination, 400 millisecond window your brain constantly rewrites to maintain the illusion of flow. You are living a half-second in the past at all times. What you see, what you hear, what you feel, it's already over by the time you become aware of it. And as for the past and future, they may already exist. The block universe theory, supported by many physicists, proposes that all moments past, present, future are equally real. You are not moving through time. You are frozen within it. Every moment has always existed and will always exist. You just think you're moving because your consciousness plays it back like a film reel, frame by frame. This means the future isn't waiting. It's already happened. The child you once were is still alive somewhere. The person you'll become at death is just as real, just unreachable. The time you thought you had is not ahead of you. It's around you like a prison. You aren't walking through life. You're trapped in a scene, scripted, framed in light and neurons, replaying what always was. But here's the part that suffocates most. If you're not moving through time, if every second of your life already exists, and choice is an illusion, then death isn't something you approach, it's something that already happened. So, if the clock isn't ticking forward, what exactly are you running from? 14. The voices that don't belong to you. Not every thought in your mind is yours. You wake up and immediately hear them. The inner chatter begins before your eyes fully open. Get up, you're late, you're not doing enough. These thoughts arrive so naturally, so smoothly, that you accept them as your own. But what if they're not? Most of the thoughts you think are echoes. Psychological studies show that your inner voice is built from thousands of outside inputs: parents, teachers, friends, enemies, media, advertisements. Over time, these voices were layered into your nervous system like code in a program. Their tone, their urgency, their judgment, all embedded into your inner world. Take a moment, really listen. That harsh voice that criticizes your body, whose is it? That sudden fear of failure who taught you that success was your only worth? That pressure to be constantly productive? Did you choose that, or did capitalism implant it? In a landmark 2005 study by the National Science Foundation, researchers found the average person has between 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. Of those, 80% are negative and 95% are repetitive. That means most of your waking life is spent replaying the same fears, the same doubts, the same lies. You're not thinking, you're echoing. Worse yet, the brain cannot distinguish between real experiences and vividly imagined ones. That means those repeated toxic thoughts, they feel like lived reality. Every time you think, I'm a failure, your nervous system reacts as if you just failed again. Your body suffers, your stress hormones spike, your cells age faster. Reality bends to repetition. This is how propaganda works, not on a national scale, but within the personal landscape of your own consciousness. You've been conditioned to think a certain way, so persistently, so subtly, that even your rebellion fits within the script written for you. When you sit in silence and the voices rise, try this, question them. Who is speaking? You'll find that your mind becomes eerily quiet when you separate yourself from these implanted loops. Not because there's nothing to say, but because the real you has never been allowed to speak. Your authentic voice, the one beneath the conditioning, isn't aggressive, insecure, or cruel. It doesn't rush, it doesn't compare, it doesn't punish, it simply observes, waits, whispers the tragedy. Most people will never hear it. They'll spend a lifetime reacting to voices that don't belong to them, living a life they didn't choose, and dying without ever meeting themselves. You are not the noise in your mind, you are the awareness behind it. And the moment you realize that, the moment you ask, whose voice is this, you begin to wake up. 15. The illusion of the final thought. What if your deepest realization is always just one thought away? You lie awake at night, trying to solve yourself, trying to think your way out of loneliness, trying to outsmart your sadness, trying to use thought to cure thought. And every time you arrive at a conclusion, something in you whispers, this still isn't it. That's because the mind is addicted to the idea of closure. It craves the final thought, the one sentence that will explain your whole life, the one realization that will finally set you free, the one theory, one diagnosis, one identity, one explanation that will finally bring rest. But here's the haunting truth. That final thought doesn't exist. The brain is a prediction machine, not a peace machine. It evolved to anticipate, not to arrive. It constantly generates mental activity not to enlighten you, but to keep you alive. Its job is to never stop thinking, because thinking equals survival. But the soul doesn't want answers, it wants presence. And that's why your wisest insights, the ones that shift your life, don't come when you're trying to think. They come when you're washing dishes, when you're walking in silence, when you're looking out the window with no agenda. Because insight is not born from control, it's born from space. Every time you say, this thought will solve it, you're falling into the same trap, chasing stillness with motion, chasing silence with noise. You can't think your way out of overthinking. You can't control your way into peace. You can't achieve stillness by force. The final thought, if it exists at all, comes not when you seek it, but when you surrender the need for it. And in that surrender, a strange thing happens. You stop trying to figure out life like a puzzle. You start living it like a poem. And the moment you do, you realize the mind was never your enemy. It was just scared. It was just trying to help. But now, finally, you don't need its protection anymore. You don't need the final thought, because you've become the space that can hold all of them without clinging to any. 16. You remember things that never happened. You're certain of your memories. That vacation, that friend, that thing someone once said that hurt you so deeply it carved a path into who you are today. But you're not remembering the past, you're manufacturing it. Every time you recall something, you don't retrieve a file from the archives. You rewrite it, you revise it. You inject your present self into your past recollection. It is no longer a record, it is a reinterpretation, a story. In 1974, psychologist Elizabeth Loftus conducted an experiment that would shatter the illusion of reliable memory. Participants were shown a video of a car crash. Later, they were asked how fast the cars were going when they hit each other. Others were asked using the word smashed. Those who heard smashed consistently recalled higher speeds, broken glass, and more dramatic damage, none of which occurred. A single word rewrote their memories. This isn't rare. This is how your brain works. Memory is not a video. It's a reconstruction. Every time you recall something, you lay fresh asphalt over the original road. What you're so sure happened may have never happened that way or at all. But that's not the disturbing part. The truly disturbing part is that your brain doesn't care. In fact, it prefers coherence over accuracy. A messy but true memory is discarded in favor of a neater, emotionally digestible lie. This is why abuse victims sometimes remember events decades later or never at all. This is why siblings can recall the same childhood event in two entirely different ways. And this is why your most cherished, formative moments may be fictions sculpted by trauma, suggestion, or the quiet tyranny of your current emotional needs. False memories aren't just possible, they're common. In one study, over 70% of participants were persuaded over the course of a few sessions to recall a vivid memory of committing a crime that never occurred. Some even remembered the police station, the officer's voice, the guilt. These weren't lies. They were stories so richly imagined and reinforced that the brain baptized them as reality. Now, ask yourself, what if the core pain around which your personality has crystallized never actually happened? What if that betrayal, that humiliation, that defining moment of shame was simply the product of misremembered context, a misinterpreted look, a false suggestion? What if your trauma is real only in the sense that you believe in it? Your brain cannot tell the difference between memory and imagination if both are emotionally charged. The amygdala lights up the same way. The hippocampus weaves the story, and the prefrontal cortex, desperate to make sense of the world, signs off on it with a whisper, "This is who you are." But if that's true, if you are built upon memories that aren't real, then who are you, exactly? Your identity is a quilt sewn from half-truths, broken images, and the emotional weight your brain has attached to them. The past doesn't shape you. Your idea of the past does. Consider déjà vu, that eerie feeling you've been here before. It's not spiritual, it's a glitch. Your brain accidentally files a present experience into your past folder, so it feels familiar, even though it isn't. You trust that feeling. You lean into it. You say, "I've lived this." You haven't. Or the Mandela effect. Thousands of people misremembering the same things. Berenstain Bears instead of Berenstain. Nelson Mandela dying in prison. The Monopoly Man having a monocle. These aren't quirks, they're symptoms. Indicators that reality, for you, is not grounded in objective data, but in social consensus and emotional rhythm. So what happens when the rhythm breaks? When someone you love insists something happened one way, and you are sure it happened another? You get angry, not because you're right, but because your identity is under threat. If that didn't happen, then your feelings weren't justified. If your feelings weren't justified, then who are you without them? Let's make it worse. In 2010, researchers implanted false memories of childhood events using doctored photographs. Participants were shown an image of themselves as children in a hot air balloon ride. The ride never happened. The photo was fake. But within days, most participants described vivid, detailed stories of the ride, the view, the wind, the excitement. Their brains had filled in the blanks. Their identities absorbed the lie as truth. And if that can happen with one manipulated image, what do you think social media is doing to you? Every filtered photo, every curated life update, every dopamine scroll is implanting emotional associations that form memories of who you are, of who you should be, of what you lack. The comparison isn't fleeting, it's fossilized. When you think of your 20s, you won't remember your actual life. You'll remember what you felt you were missing compared to the lives you saw. You are remembering an emotion, not a moment. So let's ask again, if your memories are false, if your pain is based on rewrites, if your self-image is a collage of imagined fragments, then who is living your life? There is no stable you. There never was. Only a recursive feedback loop of emotional reinterpretations posing as autobiographical truth. This is not a philosophical metaphor. It's biology, it's cognition, and it's irreversible. You will never again be able to trust a memory without suspicion. That moment of triumph, that betrayal, that conversation that haunts you, all of its aspect. Every time you replay it, you dig a deeper hole, not toward truth, but toward belief. And belief is what the brain prioritizes, because truth is expensive. Belief is cheap and efficient. Now picture this. You wake up tomorrow with no memories, but someone hands you a book titled Your Life. You read it. It feels familiar. It's emotionally vivid. So you accept it. That book becomes you. But what if the book was wrong? What if the book you've been reading for years, the one titled Me, was written by a scared child, edited by fear, published by misunderstanding, and reviewed only by the echo chamber of your own mind, and you never once questioned the author? What if every decision you've made was based on a false premise? What if you've been loyal to memories that never happened? What if the thing that shaped your soul was a lie you once told yourself to feel better, and you forgot it was a lie? 17. Your identity is a story you inherited. You believe you're you, a self, a whole, a name that fits you like a soul-sized glove. But peel back the skin of that belief, and you'll find something colder. You are not the story. You tell yourself you are the story someone else told you, long before you had a choice in the matter. You were born into a timeline already in motion, a name chosen for you, a language programmed into you, a set of cultural myths, family rituals, ancestral wounds all downloaded into the blank slate of your mind before you could form a sentence. What you think is your identity is a patchwork of borrowed memories, survival adaptations, inherited shame, and societal scripts. Your likes conditioned, your values imitated, your dreams implanted. You are not the author of your identity or the narrator of a tale dictated by forces that move quietly behind your eyes. And the most sinister part, you defend it with your life. Take, for instance, the fact that children as young as 2 can begin mimicking not just language but emotional regulation patterns of their caregivers. This means your deepest emotional reactions, how you respond to love, rejection, power, failure, are likely not yours. They're echoes, transplanted behaviors, traumas passed down through tone of voice and patterns of attention. In 2005, a study at the University of Minnesota demonstrated that adopted children often grow to resemble the personalities of their biological parents, people they've never met. And yet, these same children mimic the cultural mannerisms of their adoptive parents, which means the very fabric of who you are is split between invisible inheritance and environmental molding. You are Frankenstein's identity monster, sewn together from conflicting inputs. Let's go deeper. Do you know why you feel shame when you fail publicly? Why you crave praise? Why you want to make something of yourself that isn't you? That's the voice of a cultural myth that says your worth is tied to your productivity. Capitalism didn't just shape your spending habits, it shaped your identity. You perform yourself every day to stay legible to the system. Even gender, often clung to as a core identity, is a performance built from a set of cues: clothes, voice, posture, roles. Judith Butler called it performative. You're not born into a gender, you're assigned one. Then you spend a lifetime proving you deserve to keep it. And if you deviate, the system punishes you until you conform or collapse. But it gets worse. The idea that you have a single, stable self is scientifically unsound. Neuroscience has no location in the brain where the self lives. No central hub. The brain is modular, distributed. There is no CEO up there, just clusters of neurons firing in patterns, giving rise to the illusion of continuity. You are not a person. You are a process, and that process is vulnerable to editing. Think about how easily your identity shifts depending on context. Around your parents, you become the obedient version. Around your friends, the reckless version. Around strangers, the guarded version. Which one is the real you? None of them. They're all masks. And worse, you don't choose them consciously. They emerge like reflexes. You've never been alone with the real you, because the real you doesn't exist. In psychology, there's a term, the looking glass self. It's the idea that you form your identity based on how you think others perceive you. You are not looking in a mirror. You are assembling yourself based on imagined reflections. You are a hologram built from projections. And that's the trap. You spend your life trying to find yourself in books, relationships, careers, art. But you are not lost. You were never there to begin with. The you seek is a myth, an emergent hallucination, a comforting narrative meant to make chaos digestible. Without it, you'd crumble under the weight of randomness. So, society taught you how to fabricate a self and then forced you to defend it. Every social interaction reinforces this identity prison. You use your name like a password to re-enter a character. You say things like, "I'm not the kind of person who..." But what does that even mean? You are fluid, inconsistent, fragmented. The only thing tying it all together is your refusal to admit it. Even your memories, those sacred anchors of self, unreliable. They're reconstructions, not recordings. Every time you remember, you're re-editing. And yet, those same faulty memories are the bricks of your personality. Now ask yourself, who would you be if you lost all memory? If no one recognized you? If you spoke no language? Would you still exist? And if not, did you ever exist at all? That voice in your head that says, "This is who I am." That voice was taught how to speak, what to value, how to hurt, and how to explain the pain away. Even rebellion is pre-programmed. Think you're unique for going against the grain. Culture made room for that too. It gives you a subculture, a brand identity, a niche to monetize. You're still participating in the script, just reading from the back pages. And the longer you play this role, the harder it is to imagine a world where you aren't someone. You cling to your story because it gives you gravity. You fear letting go because behind the curtain of identity, there's only silence, stillness, meaninglessness. But here's the darkest truth of all. The world doesn't care who you are. It only cares what you do. Your identity is noise, an afterthought, an aesthetic. And once your usefulness expires, the system discards you without mourning. Your story ends not with a bang, but with a page that no one bothers to read. So I ask, you, if your identity was assigned, if your self is a projection, if your memories are unreliable, if your values are borrowed, if your name is a label, and your behavior is context dependent, then who the hell are you, really? Or is the answer even darker? What if you've never been anyone at all? 18. Your mind has never been yours. Alone, you have always thought of your mind as a sanctuary, a place sealed from the outside, insulated by flesh and thought, but it never was. From your first breath, your mind was penetrated by language, culture, media, religion, expectations. You were programmed with syntax before you ever formed a belief. And once the code was installed, the idea of you was merely its first product. Consider this. Your most private internal monologue uses a language you didn't invent, the shape of your inner thoughts, the cadence of your reasoning, the metaphors you use to make sense of pain. They were all passed to you like an infection. The voice in your head is not yours. It's the collective voice of your environment, your caretakers, your traumas, your media diet. Every I you whisper internally is spoken in a borrowed accent. Even the concept of thought independence is a post hoc illusion. The Stanford prison experiment showed us how easily ordinary people, within mere hours, can be recoded into roles so violently unfamiliar that they begin to torture, dehumanize, or collapse into madness. They weren't coerced, they simply adapted to the atmosphere. Minds don't resist environments, they dissolve into them. The media you consume doesn't just influence your mood, it alters your memory, your value system, your very wiring. The frequency of dopamine releases in response to TikTok rhythms, the fracturing of attention due to rapid edits, the shortening of patience and emotional tolerance, these aren't accidental. They're engineered parasitism. Your neural pathways are pruned and regrown, not for your benefit, but for someone else's profit. And still, you say, my mind, as if ownership were possible, as if the neural tissue inside your skull hasn't been colonized by algorithms more ancient than the ones in your bloodstream. Cultural memes operate just like viruses, but worse. Don't just replicate, they dictate. They inform your fashion, your politics, your love language. You weren't drawn to the people you loved out of free will. You were drawn by Puritan scripts, assigned values, subconscious modeling. If you were born 200 years ago in another land, your idea of love, gender, pride, and God would be unrecognizable. What does that say about the you defend so fiercely? Mirror neurons, the ones that let you feel what another is feeling, just for empathy. They're also the basis of social contagion. You cry at movies because your nervous system cannot distinguish between another's pain and your own. Your rage at injustice, preloaded, your patriotism, installed. Even your disgust what you find perverse or pure isn't yours. It's a mold that fits your mind the moment you began to absorb the world. The truth is, you've never had an original emotion, just recombinations of inherited affect. You don't feel, you echo. Let's go deeper. There's a phenomenon in neuroscience called transactive memory. Couples, families, even friend groups divide knowledge between them like organs in a body. One person remembers birthdays, another remembers how to fix the car. The brain offloads memory into others, and this isn't a metaphor, it's structural. If your partner dies, part of your memory dies too. You've outsourced your cognition. You always have. You were never one mind. You were a node in a distributed consciousness. This is why isolation drives people insane, not from loneliness, but from the severing of their extended neural self. Solitary confinement doesn't just punish, it disassembles. Your identity is stored between people, not within. And now your memory lives in cloud backups. Your instincts are tuned by trends. Your opinions are dictated by invisible feedback loops. You think you chose your aesthetic, your beliefs, your ambitions. You didn't. You absorbed them through osmotic exposure to 1,000 microforces you never even noticed. Even rebellion is scripted. The tattoos, the political rants, the breaking away, they're all pre-written archetypes with commercially viable aesthetics. Your rage against the machine is just a product category. When you laugh, you often laugh in the timing and tone of sitcoms. When you grieve in the same 5 Kubler-Ross stages broadcasted by pop psychology. Your language around trauma, healing, identity, empowerment, it's all sourced from pop media frameworks. You didn't invent your grief. You just learned which template to copy. What is left of you when everything internal has been borrowed, curated, nudged, or enforced? Let's return to the basics. You imagine your thoughts are private, but EEG studies show that given enough brainwave data, a machine can reconstruct the words you're about to say before you say them. You don't control your thoughts. You don't even own them. Free will. Neuroscience debunked that a decade ago. The Libet experiments found that your brain initiates actions before your conscious self decides to act. The sensation of decision is an afterthought, a narrative layered on top of an act already made. Your mind is a public performance pretending to be a sovereign entity. There is no you behind the curtain, just a loop of inputs and outputs processed through biological and cultural machinery. You call that loop a personality. But if I take away your culture, your memory, your language, your social group, and your childhood experiences, what's left? Silence. Even your suffering, your sacred pain, the one thing that feels personal, that too is shaped by the words you've been given to describe it. Take away the language, and the suffering becomes a raw hum with no shape, no edge. And even then, that hum was influenced by others' reactions to your pain. You learned how to feel based on how others reacted to you. You didn't just borrow language, you borrowed meaning. And meaning is the deepest parasite of all. Even your dreams, those unconscious, sacred realms of surreal privacy, aren't yours. They're shaped by your waking life, your media exposure, your traumas, your unmet needs. Your subconscious isn't a personal domain. It's a filtered dumping ground of your conscious intake. You think your mind is a fortress, but it's an airport. Ideas fly in and out, most without inspection. You think you're the pilot, but you've always been the terminal. Now ask yourself this: if your thoughts are borrowed, your feelings are echoes, your identity is a story, and your choices are scripted, what is it that you're defending when you say, "This is who I am"? 19. The self-editing universe. You've lived under the illusion that the universe is something out there, solid, fixed, impartial. But the moment you observe it, you alter it. Not metaphorically, physically, empirically. Quantum mechanics, the most precise theory in the history of science, tells us this: reality doesn't exist in a defined state until it is measured, until you look. In the double-slit experiment, particles like electrons behave like waves, not waves in space, but waves of probability, ghostly maybes. They can pass through two slits at once, but the moment you place a measuring device to observe which slit the electron goes through, it changes, it collapses. The wave of probabilities becomes a single particle forced into a definite outcome by the act of being seen. This isn't just scientific poetry. This is experimental. Fact, you cannot observe the world without changing it. And that observation doesn't just change your knowledge of the world, it changes the world itself. The observer isn't separate from the system. The observer is the system. So what, then, is the universe before you see it? Is it real, or is it a formless mist, waiting for your gaze to give it shape? How do you walk through a world that doesn't fully exist until you look at it? When you lie in bed and close your eyes, does the room still exist? Does the floor exist beneath you when you don't think of it? Or is the continuity of the world just the lagging memory of yesterday's measurements? You might think this only happens at the quantum level, tiny particles behaving strangely. But those particles are the building blocks of everything, of cells, of neurons, of thoughts. You are made of these same dancing probabilities. You are a quantum system observing another quantum system, folding into itself in recursive loops. You are watching yourself be watched. Consider the quantum eraser experiments. In them, the path information of a particle is erased after the particle has passed through the slits, and the interference pattern vanishes retroactively. Retroactively, the past changes based on what you decide to observe in the present. The effect changes the cause. Causality bleeds. If your present decisions can shape the past, what was the past, really? What did your childhood look like before you remembered it? Before you gave it a story? Was it real, or did you edit it into place like the collapse of a probability wave? You are not a camera recording a fixed world. You are the editing software, retroactively stabilizing shaky scenes, auto-correcting lighting, redubbing silence into significance. Every memory you have has been rewritten by the act of remembering it. Every fact you cling to has been selected, cropped, and shaped by the context in which you recalled it. You are not remembering your life, you are remixing it. In physics, this is called the participatory anthropic principle, that the universe requires conscious observers to exist in any definite form. The implication: you're not in the universe, you're cothering it. Reality is a feedback loop, and you're stuck inside the loop, and this loop edits itself. Particles don't just respond to observation, they seem to know the future conditions they'll be placed in. In one version of the quantum eraser experiment, particles adjust their past behavior based on detectors that are switched on after they pass. This suggests a kind of time symmetry, or worse, time entanglement, where past and future bleed into one another. You live inside a book that rewrites its own first chapter every time you turn the page. And now consider this. If the universe is editable, who is doing the editing? You, the observer. But if your identity is constructed through memory, and memory is a mutable reconstruction, then the observer is also an edit. You are observing reality. Reality is observing you. And both of you are changing from the act. You are not static. You are not solid. You are not consistent. You are a shifting probability field, stabilized only by the illusion of continuity. The you who reads this sentence is not the you who read the last one. That person no longer exists. The moment passed. The wave function collapsed. A new arrangement has formed, similar but not the same. Time is not a flowing river, it's a fixed block. And yet your experience of time, of moments, of sequence, of cause and effect is stitched together by your mind. The block universe of relativity tells us that past, present, and future all coexist. But your consciousness walks through that block, one slice at a time, hallucinating motion through frozen coordinates. So what is real? The physical moment, the remembered one, the measured one, the observed one. And when you close your eyes, which version remains? When you see yourself in the mirror, do you believe it's you? Light bounces from your skin, travels a fraction of a second to the glass, and back to your eye. That fraction of time, however minuscule, is enough. You're always seeing a delayed version of yourself, a ghost, a remnant of a person who already changed. So, when you speak to someone else, hear their voice, read their message, you're always interacting with a shadow, not just in space, but in time. The present moment is never whole. It is stitched together from delayed signals, collapsed probabilities, distorted narratives. You are never anywhere in full. You are being edited, constantly, not by someone else, but by the rules of reality itself. The rules you cannot step outside of, because you are made of them. You are a paragraph inside a book trying to read itself, and the book writes back. You've been trained to think of yourself as a stable protagonist moving through an external plot. But what if the plot only exists because you demand a story? What if the world shapes itself around your desperate need for order, for continuity, for narrative? The ancient philosophers asked, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound? Quantum physics rewrites the question. If a particle isn't observed, does it have a location? And neuroscience answers, if a memory isn't recalled, did it ever happen? And now you, in the quiet of your thoughts, must ask, if the self is an editor of illusion, what lies beneath the final revision? 20. Your decisions were decided before you decided. You think you're deciding this, reading this line, absorbing this thought, nodding slightly, breathing slower now, maybe. You think that's your will. But here's the fracture you've never healed from. Your choices aren't yours. They never were. In 2008, neuroscientist John Dylan Haynes conducted a brain scan study that shattered the myth of conscious choice. Participants were asked to press a button with their left or right hand whenever they felt the urge, while they believed they were deciding freely. Their brains had already made the decision up to 7 seconds earlier, detectable by fMRI. 7 seconds before you choose, your brain has already launched the sequence. Let that register. By the time you think, I'll choose left, the choice has already fired its neural starting gun, cascading through your prefrontal cortex. The illusion of choice is granted to you, post-fact, like a child, allowed to believe they chose dinner when the menu was set hours ago. Your will is the narrator, not the driver. Consider Libet's experiments in the 1980s. His IG readings showed that the readiness potential, the brain's preparation to move, preceded a person's conscious intention to move by hundreds of milliseconds. You're late to your own life, late to the thought you believe is yours. You live in a delay. Worse, your conscious mind is the last to know. Yet the cultural myth of free will remains holy. You are taught you are free. You are punished for choices you made. You are praised for accomplishments you earned. But if you are not the originator of your own decisions, what does it mean to be good or bad, guilty or innocent, brave or cowardly? Everything you chose was already on track before you were even aware there was a fork in the road. And where did the patterns in your brain come from? Evolution, trauma, childhood wiring, genetic predispositions, hormonal fluctuations, microbiome states. You were sculpted by causes you didn't select. You didn't choose your childhood. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose your brain chemistry. You didn't choose your unconscious impulses. and yet you're told to own your choices. It's like punishing a leaf for where the wind threw it. Let's go deeper. Imagine standing at a vending machine, torn between chocolate and chips. You feel a pull, weigh your cravings, maybe justify it. I need energy, or I deserve a treat. But beneath that decision was a tangle of invisible forces. Your blood sugar levels, a TV ad from last night, the ambient lighting, your stress from a text message received hours ago. Your free will is just a rationalization engine, spinning stories after the circuitry fires. And neuroscience isn't alone. Behavioral psychology confirms it. Daniel Kahneman's dual process theory divides your mind into System 1 fast, unconscious, and System 2 slow, conscious. Almost everything you choose originates in System 1. System 2 merely edits the narrative so you can live with it. So now, let's ask, if your conscious self is merely the PR team for your unconscious drives, who exactly is in charge? Even your resistance to this idea, the urge to say no, I feel my choices, is itself pre-wired. The brain defends its own illusion because the myth of autonomy is comforting. Without it, you're a puppet built of nerves and chemicals, pretending to be sovereign, and you are pretending. Let's return to your memories. They too shape your choices, right? But memories are malleable. They change each time you recall them. Your brain edits them to preserve the ego, to sustain the illusion that you are a consistent self with a cohesive history. But what if the you that decides today is not the same you that remembers yesterday? What if you're a shifting simulation of stored distortions and preset reactions? Even quantum physics doesn't rescue you. You may hope for randomness at the subatomic level to free your will from determinism. But randomness isn't freedom, it's chaos. A coin toss is not a choice. So you are cornered. Either your actions are determined or they are random. But neither path leads to freedom. You are acted upon, not the actor. Your free will is like the cursor on your screen seeming to direct action, while merely following the mouse you cannot see. Behind every intention is an invisible cascade. Behind every cascade, a cause. And behind every cause, more causes stretching back through genes, weather, culture, evolution, planetary history. Trace the line far enough, and you arrive at a star exploding, spilling atoms that would one day become your hands. So when you pressed yes to continue this descent, was it you who chose? Or was it the culmination of every moment before now, each one stacking behind the other like dominoes, knocking you into inevitability? If you were to rewind your life and play it against same genes, same experiences, same memories, would you ever choose differently? Or would you always land here, reading this sentence, haunted by the illusion of a freedom you never held? So I'll ask again, if the voice that says I choose is just the echo of neurons firing, who or what is really speaking? 21. Every memory is a lie. You believe you remember moments like monuments, tall, immovable, carved in the granite of your mind. The first time someone broke your trust, the way your mother cried in the kitchen that night, the sound of your name said with disgust or desire. You think these memories define you, build the architecture of your identity. But what if I told you that every one of them, every single one, is a reconstruction, a lie retold so often, so convincingly, that you began to believe it was real? Because that's what memory is, not a recording, not a file you pull from storage. It's a simulation rebuilt from scratch every time you retrieve it. Neurons don't store a memory like a hard drive. They refire a pattern, reinterpret a sensory scaffold, approximate what might have happened, and in doing so, they change. It, slightly, subtly, but undeniably. Your brain can't help it. Elizabeth Loftus showed the world just how fragile memory is. In experiment after experiment, she proved that simply suggesting a false detail, like a red stop sign when there was none, or glass shattered in a crash that never involved glass, can implant an entirely false memory, and people would swear by it, would die by it, because their minds filled in the blanks, then stitched them with confidence. Even worse, the more emotionally charged the memory, the more corrupted it becomes. That trauma you've replayed 1,000 times, it's no longer what happened, it's what you believe happened, shaped by repetition, warped by fear, strengthened by the very act of recalling it. This isn't just theory. Neuroimaging shows that every time you remember something, the brain reactivates different regions than when it originally experienced it. Memory retrieval is reconstruction, not playback. You are a courtroom sketch artist drawing from feelings, not facts. And it gets darker. False memories aren't just errors, they're indistinguishable from real ones. People can remember committing crimes they never committed. They can recall abuse that never occurred. Entire relationships can be rewritten in the aftermath of betrayal. Your emotional bias shapes the memory, then the memory reshapes your emotional reality. It's recursive, self-reinforcing, unstable. That nostalgic trip you take into your childhood. Do you think your memories are safe just because they're older? No. Childhood is where the most fabrications are buried, half-remembered. Fairy tales stitched together from bedtime stories, cartoons, dreams. We all carry mythologies of our early years, built from scraps, long eroded by time and imagination. And when you forget something, that's not a failure, it's a feature. Your brain actively prunes memories to preserve narrative coherence. It edits, deletes, rearranges. The you of today is the result of those edits. Not a consistent identity, but a character developed by a fallible narrator. Now, think about this. Every major decision you've made, who to trust, who to leave, what to fear, was influenced by a memory. And if that memory is false, or at least deeply unreliable, then what does that make your decisions? Are you living your life based on emotional hallucinations? And if your past isn't real, if it's a fluid hallucination, your brain each time, what exactly are you trying to heal from? How do you mourn a lie? 22. The mind invents pain to keep you obedient. Pain is supposed to protect you. That's what we're taught, that pain is the body's alarm system, warning you of injury, damage, danger. But the more we study the mind, the clearer it becomes. Pain isn't just a physical reaction, it's a psychological invention. And sometimes it's not warning you, it's controlling you. Let me explain. There are people in the world who feel no pain, a rare genetic condition called congenital insensitivity to pain. You might think that makes them superhuman, but it's a curse. They walk on broken bones, burn themselves without realizing, and die young because their body never tells them to stop. But at the opposite extreme, there are people whose mind creates unbearable pain with no injury at all. Phantom limb syndrome, complex regional pain syndrome, psychogenic pain. Entire limbs can ache, burn, or feel crushed even when the limb is gone, even when nothing is physically wrong. So what's happening? The brain, in its desperate attempt to predict and protect, sometimes manufactures pain signals based on threat perception rather than actual damage. If it senses danger, emotional, physical, social, It may produce pain to modify your behavior, to keep you still, to make you retreat, to force compliance. It's not just nerves. It's a narrative mechanism. Pain is the language your subconscious uses when words won't work. Ever wondered why heartbreak hurts physically? Why shame burns in your gut? Why social rejection triggers the same brain regions as a broken bone? Because to your mind, social death and physical death are indistinguishable. You evolved in tribes. Rejection meant abandonment. Abandonment meant death. So your mind created pain, not to protect your body, but to control your behavior, to force obedience to the social rules that keep you alive. And the worst part, you don't get to choose when this system activates. You might be lying in bed, perfectly safe, and yet your chest tightens, your skin burns, your stomach knots in fear, because somewhere, deep in the old circuitry of your brain, it believes you're under threat. That pain is better than disobedience. There's a theory in neuroscience called the pain prediction error, the idea that your brain predicts pain before it feels it, and then updates the experience afterward, which means sometimes the pain comes first. The signal is sent before there's anything to feel. You hurt, not because something is wrong, but because your mind expects it to be. Chronic pain, in many cases, is no longer connected to injury at all. It's a memory loop, a false alarm trapped in a feedback circuit, a ghost haunting your nerves. Your body might be healed, but the mind refuses to believe it, and so it keeps the pain alive. But why would it do that? Because pain keeps you obedient. It makes you rest. It stops you from reaching out. It locks you in place. From a primitive survival standpoint, that's useful. But from a modern, emotional perspective, it's a prison. You're afraid to speak your truth because it might hurt someone. And so your mind gives you anxiety to stop you. You want to chase a dream, but your mind remembers a past failure. So it creates a wave of exhaustion, nausea, or fear to keep you safe. The pain isn't protecting you, it's punishing you for wanting more. And once you see that, once you understand that your mind can create suffering to enforce obedience, you begin to question every ache, every wave of sadness, every unexplained fatigue. What if it's not a sign that something's wrong? What if it's your old trauma trying to keep you small? Pain isn't always a signal to stop. Sometimes it's a test to break free. 23. Why your mind repeats painful memories while you sleep. You think sleep is for rest. You believe that when your eyes close, your mind powers down, resets, reboots, retreats into dreams. But what if I told you your mind uses sleep not to rest, but to replay your deepest pain on purpose? Have you ever noticed how sometimes, just before falling asleep, your brain will sabotage you? You'll be lying in bed, exhausted, and suddenly a memory crashes in. A heartbreak from 5 years ago, a moment of shame from childhood, a mistake that still haunts you, vivid, sharp, and loud in the silence of the night. And you wonder, why now? Why this? You're not alone. Researchers have found that painful, emotional memories are often reactivated by the brain during REM sleep, the phase where we dream. Not by accident, but deliberately. Your brain doesn't want to forget your trauma. It wants to process it. There's a theory in neuroscience called memory reconsolidation. Every time you recall a memory, your brain doesn't just play it back. Like a movie, it rebuilds it, edits it, changes it. In this fragile state, the memory can be updated or reinforced. And guess what? The brain prioritizes emotional memories, especially painful ones, for this overnight reprocessing. Why? Because from an evolutionary standpoint, pain equals survival. Your ancestors needed to remember which berries poisoned them, which animals attacked, which people betrayed. So your brain evolved a system. Revisit the pain at night to prevent danger. Tomorrow, it's trying to protect you. But in a modern world, where danger isn't a saber-toothed tiger, but an ex-lover, a failed dream, or a moment of social humiliation, the system becomes corrupted. Your brain keeps showing you the same emotional wound, again and again, not realizing that the danger is already over. Here's where it gets darker. Some studies suggest the brain intensifies emotional memories during sleep if they remain unresolved. That's why the breakup still stings. That's why childhood wounds feel fresh when you think about them. That's why your worst moments loop like a glitching reel, not fading, but deepening. You're not just remembering, you're reliving. And sleep, the time when you're most defenseless, becomes a theater for psychological torment. Have you ever woken up from a dream, heart pounding, with tears in your eyes, feeling as if something real just happened? That wasn't just a dream, it was your subconscious testing your emotional system. Your mind simulates emotional scenarios in dreams, recreating fear, betrayal, loss, loneliness, not to torture you, but to train you. It's like an emotional gym, but without your conscious awareness. It often feels like punishment. The mind replays pain to prepare you for what it thinks you'll face again. It's trying to say, you were hurt once, let's be ready next time. But it doesn't realize there won't be a next time, even worse. Your brain amplifies emotional memories by linking them. That's why one sad thought can trigger a flood of others. Your brain is scanning for patterns. That breakup reminds it of abandonment. That childhood scolding reminds it of unworthiness. That failure reminds it of rejection. Soon, you're not dealing with one memory. You're trapped in a cathedral of echoes, each pain opening the door to another dot. And while your body sleeps, your soul walks through that haunted hall, room by room, unable to stop the tour. But here's the strange gift inside the darkness. Your brain only replays what it believes still matters. It's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to make sense of what broke you. Dreams aren't random. They're emotional puzzles, coded simulations. Your subconscious runs to figure out, why did this happen? Could I have stopped it? What does it mean about me? Am I safe now? Most of the time, you don't wake up with answers, but your brain thinks it's helping you survive. Want to break the loop? Here's the harsh truth. Unfelt emotions never die, unprocessed. Pain never heals. Unspoken memories scream louder in the dark. Your mind will keep replaying the pain until it believes you've faced it fully, and that requires a conscious act. Writing about it, speaking it aloud, naming the emotion, feeling the full depth of what you avoided. When you integrate a memory instead of avoiding it, your brain marks it as resolved, and it no longer needs to replay it at night. In other words, healing tells your brain, we're safe now. And the dreams change. Next time a painful memory visits you in the silence before sleep, don't fight it. Listen, feel. Let it speak, because maybe it's not a punishment. Maybe it's the last time it needs to be remembered. 24 language, the lie that created you. You never understood the cage because you were taught to love it. And you were taught that love is the word for what you felt, that grief is the word for what you lost, that you are a word for the collection of memories, sensations, and impressions wrapped around a fragile frame of bones. But what if none of that was real? What if language is not a bridge, but a wall? A beautifully painted prison of symbols and signs, fooling you into thinking that communication is clarity, when it's really disconnection dressed in structure. Let's begin with this. Language is not universal. It is not objective. It is not the same thing across time, across cultures, across minds. The moment you name something, you amputate its infinite possibilities. A tree becomes a tree, no longer the strange living skeleton that drinks sunlight and speaks to its kin through fungal networks under the soil. A mother becomes mum, no longer the fierce biological storm of hormones, instincts, and subconscious shadows. Language breaks the world into bite-sized illusions. It makes it manageable, explainable, but also manipulable. You were taught language before you were taught yourself. Your brain did not first form concepts. It absorbed the sounds your caregivers repeated, and then constructed meaning around those sounds. That's the inverse of understanding. You didn't discover the world. The words told you what it was. Words came first, perception second, meaning third. So when you say I feel sad, you're not feeling sadness, you're recalling the template of sadness your culture allowed you to recognize. What if you're actually experiencing 6 other emotional states? Your language has no name for your pain. Isn't yours. It's linguistic leftovers shaped into something acceptable, nameable, postable. Consider this. The Himba tribe of Namibia doesn't have a word for blue. When presented with a color wheel, they literally cannot distinguish blue from green. Their eyes see it, but their language doesn't permit differentiation. You are a prisoner of your own perception, and the guard is your vocabulary, and it doesn't end there. Have you ever tried explaining a deep fear or mystical experience to someone? Felt the words fail, grow clumsy, betray the moment? That's not your fault. That's language showing its real nature. It is not a mirror. It is a distortion field. The more emotional, spiritual, or traumatic the experience, the less accurate words become. Because words flatten reality into symbols. Symbols which are then interpreted through someone else's filters. Your truth, once spoken, becomes their fiction. Language is recursive too. You define self using words like identity, personality, character, but all of those are themselves defined using other words, looping endlessly in a tautological hallucination. You're standing on a staircase made of fog, convinced it's concrete because everyone else says they're standing on it too. You don't feel love. You feel what you think is love because you've read poems and watched films and listened to songs that all use the same word for it. How much of what you believe to be true emotions are merely mimicked phrases, role-played reactions? What if your entire romantic history is a performance of linguistic scripts written by people long dead? Even trauma, something as deeply physical and real as it gets, is reshaped by language. The second you say, "This happened to me," the body's raw, unprocessed chaos becomes a narrative. Narratives have arcs. Stories have logic. But trauma doesn't, and yet language forces it into one. You were born with screams and instincts. Language trained you into structure, and every structure is a limitation. Language enabled civilization, yes, but it also enabled propaganda, religion, legal slavery, mass deception, and manufactured wars. It built empires not with swords, but with terms, freedom, nation, enemy, obedience. Without those words, no army would march. No genocide would justify itself. Language is the most dangerous weapon ever created because it doesn't look like a weapon. The concept of time, a linguistic illusion, Other animals live in instinctual now. You live in yesterday and tomorrow because you have verbs that conjugate action across non-existent planes. You can worry because you have the word for it. You can regret because someone gave you that concept in letters. Time is not felt, it's spoken into you. Even silence has become a linguistic concept. You don't just experience silence, you think about it. You interpret it. It's awkward, it's peaceful, it's threatening. Why? Because you were trained to assign meaning even to absence. Language fills in every blank with a lie that sounds logical, and here's the deepest cut. You think in words, the voice in your head. That's not you. That's learnt vocabulary performing its endless monologue. Remove all words from your mind for just 1 second and what remains? Who are you without internal narration? Can you even exist in a state without describing it? You've never met yourself, only the voice that talks about you. Buddhism hints at this. So do mystics, quantum physicists, and philosophers. True awareness comes not from adding more words, but from subtracting them. But, in your world, the modern world, that's impossible. You're drowning in language, social media, news, cycles, opinions layered on opinions, echoing until even reality sounds like just another voice. And what's worst, language lies most efficiently through certainty. Words make everything sound finished, framed, closed. You say, he is evil. This is wrong. That's the truth. But what is evil? What is wrong? What is truth? These words are supposed to point at something outside themselves, but they never do. They point only inward, into the maze of your assumptions. Language doesn't describe reality, it creates it. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as it is spoken to you. You're not living a life, you're narrating a role, speaking your character into existence, dying in chapters written by a culture that needed you to be legible. But what if you stopped? What if for 1 hour you refused every word in your mind and just were? Who would remain? Who would you be without words? Would you even exist at all?